These are the most interesting historical photographs and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 10,000 subscribers. In 1955, Marilyn Monroe was photographed on the New York subway, which became a rare evidence of her appearance on public transport. The picture was taken at a time when the actress was actively working to strengthen her independent career after breaking her contract with the film studio. On November 20, 1985, Bill Gates introduced Windows 1.0, Microsoft's first operating system with a graphical interface. The program has become an important step in the development of personal computers, offering users Windows operation and multitasking. The image shows a ludoscope, an optical toy of the 19th century, the forerunner of cinema. The device worked with a set of rotating discs with drawings, creating the illusion of movement when viewed through the slots. At the beginning of the 20th century, palanquins were used in Japan for the movement of wealthy women, which were carried on the shoulders of porters. A 1901 photograph shows how traditional transportation is used to transport a woman. In 1929, blacksmith Patrick O'Neill continued to work in England, using a special metal prosthesis instead of a lost arm. The photo shows him working in a workshop with his assistants. In the 1970s, inflatable slimming shorts became widespread, which were offered as a means to accelerate fat burning. Their action was based on the creation of a greenhouse effect due to a tight fit and heat retention. Around 1915, mountain rescuers used special breathing apparatus and protective masks to work in conditions of smoke and gas pollution in the mines. Such kits made it possible to carry out emergency work and rescue miners in emergency situations. French actress Brigitte Bardot is depicted in the 1955 film Streetlight. At that time, she was just beginning her path to international fame, which soon made her one of the icons of world cinema. The Atari 2600 video game console, released in 1977, became one of the first mass-produced home consoles. She used replaceable cartridges, which allowed players to run different games on the same device. Italian shoe designer Salvatore Ferragamo has created unique models for movie stars, including Sophia Loren, Marilyn Monroe, and Greta Garbo. His studio has become a symbol of the high style of Hollywood in the middle of the 20th century. In 1968, engineer Douglas Engelbart's introduced the first computer mouse made of a wooden case with two metal wheels. The state became part of his conglomerate of intellectual achievements, and for the first time, he pointed to the famous democracy, the mother of all demos. In the photograph from the 1930s, a Belarusian peasant sits next to a makeshift structure made of woven twigs covered with a thatched roof. Such structures were used as temporary outbuildings or dwellings in poor rural areas. In 1921, Lithuania sent food aid to Saratov province, which suffered from a famine. The photo shows a wagon with sacks of grain and people involved in organizing the delivery. In 1982, Pablo Escobar won a seat in the Colombian Congress, which became part of his attempts to legalize influence through politics. The photo shows him among other deputies in Bogota. In 1954, Japanese actor Haruo Nakajima played the role of Godzilla for the first time, wearing a heavy monster costume. In the photo, he is captured in a break between filming, holding a cigarette, and staying inside the costume. Nakajima continued to play Godzilla for almost 2 decades, becoming a cult figure in Japanese cinema. In 1891, in California, lumberjacks cut down a giant sequoia tree, nicknamed Mark Twain. These trees were considered a symbol of the greatness of American nature, but the massive deforestation of the late 19th century caused significant damage to forests. In 1932, the first stationary hairdryers began to be used in Moscow hairdressers, which consisted of metal caps with hot air supply. In the photo, the women are sitting under the devices, waiting for the procedure to be completed. At the end of the 19th century, Madame Rolly's so-called toilet mask was advertised in the United States, which was offered as a means to whiten and preserve the skin. The manufacturer claimed that it is able to eliminate skin defects and replace cosmetics. In 1979, Ridley Scott's film Alien made a strong impression on the audience thanks to the scene with the appearance of a monster from the chest. The photo shows cinema visitors expressing shock and horror while watching this moment. In 1923, a picture of Henry Ford in a cowboy suit next to Thomas Edison was taken in New Jersey. Both industrialists maintained friendly relations and often participated in joint trips and events. In 1987, Christina Applegate and Johnny Depp attended a charity event together. Both were at the height of their careers at the time and often appeared at public events. In 1991, a joint exhibition of the bodybuilding national teams of the USSR and the USA was held in the USA. In the photo, athletes from the two countries posed together against the background of an event banner. In 1968, Atlantic City hosted the first national Miss Black America beauty pageant, created as a response to racial discrimination in traditional pageants. In 1964, Heineken introduced experimental square Wobo bottles designed for building houses. The design allowed the bottles to be laid like bricks, fixing them with cement mortar. In June 1918, a French officer was photographed in a railway carriage with a stork, which he was taking home. Animals often accompanied soldiers and became their kind of talismans. In 1912, an outbreak of pneumonic plague occurred in Manchuria, which required special protective measures. In the photo, the doctor is depicted in a fully covering suit with glasses and a mask designed to prevent infection. In January 1985, Brazilian sailors took a swim near their submarine, and one of the submariners armed himself with an FN-49 rifle to protect himself from sharks. Such safety measures were mandatory when bathing the crew in the open sea. In 1977, John Travolta was preparing for a role in the movie Saturday Night Fever, which became a cult for the disco era. During the rehearsal, he practiced the dance moves that later brought him worldwide fame. In 1962, South Vietnamese army soldiers used elephants to move and patrol the jungle. The animals provided transportation for people and equipment in hard-to-reach areas where machinery was ineffective. In 1918, British soldiers used camouflage observation posts made in the form of artificial tree trunks. The construction of a metal frame and a mesh with a skin made it possible to conduct reconnaissance unnoticed by the enemy. In April 1912, after the Titanic disaster, some of the surviving passengers were brought to the United States aboard the steamer Carpathia. The photo shows the survivors in one of the rooms where they were provided with temporary accommodation. In October 1972, the first ever computer game tournament was held at Stanford University. The participants competed in the game Space War, created back in 1962. This event became the starting point for the development of esports. The 1960 World Book Encyclopedia advertisement. Before the advent of the internet and search engines, such multi-volume publications were the main source of knowledge from which any information search began. Joe Smith, a blacksmith from Gloucester, demonstrates unusual strength and balance by holding a massive road sign with his teeth. The picture was taken on March 28, 1936, England. A rare copy of the book with the first Walt Disney Studio sketches for the full-length animated film Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, USA, 1938. The photo shows an elderly man demonstrating an acrobatic trick, throwing his leg over his shoulder and pressing his shoe to his ear as if talking on the phone. Such pictures were often published in the middle of the 20th century in humorous magazines and newspapers. The photo is indeed Pfizer Laboratory 1963, where employees worked in sterile suits with live samples of the measles virus. Hundreds of culture flasks can be seen on the shelves. The virus was grown in cells of chicken embryos and human tissues, and then weakened to create a vaccine. U.S. President Gerald Ford, during a visit to Kyoto in 1974, takes part in a traditional Japanese game with a geisha, where participants should get as close as possible without touching their lips. The stone money of the Yap people, known as Rai, has been used for centuries on the islands of Micronesia. Their value depended on the size and complexity of the delivery, rather than the ability to physically transfer the coin. Marilyn Monroe, performs in front of the U.S. Marines during a tour of Korea on February 16, 1954. The concert gathered tens of thousands of soldiers and became one of her most memorable performances in military service. Leo Tolstoy learned to ride a bicycle at the age of 67 and issued a special ticket that gave him the right to travel through the streets of Moscow. In 1896, Scientific American magazine noted that the writer amazed fellow villagers in Yasnaya Polyana with his new habit. In 1962, the Shah of Iran and his wife visited the United States and, together with Walt Disney, rode the rides at Disneyland. This visit was part of their official tour and symbolized the rapprochement of the two countries during the Cold War. Winston Churchill during the Second Boer War in South Africa, Bloemfontein, 1900. In those years, he worked as a war correspondent and gained fame for his reporting and daring escape from captivity. Madame Inez de Courcelles is one of the first female taxi drivers in Paris, 1908. She drove a car on an equal basis with men, while the profession of a driver was considered exclusively male. A group of Russian wrestlers participating in competitions at the Great St. Petersburg State Circus on Fontanka, 1912. These tournaments brought together the country's strongest athletes and became an important part of the development of professional wrestling in Russia. Samurai kabuto helmet in the shape of a dragonfly, 17th century. Such armor not only protected the warrior, but also served as a symbol reflecting his strength and spirit. New York Police Commissioner William O'Brien destroys illegal pinball machines in Brooklyn, March 30th, 1945. At that time, pinball was considered a gambling game and was banned in the city for almost 3 decades. This is a rare photo showing young Barack Obama in 1980, long before he became the 44th President of the United States. This is a unique example of an individually made prosthetic arm of the 16th century, created by German craftsmen specifically for a noble warrior. The design was not only functional, allowing you to hold the weapon, but also served as a symbol of the high status of the owner. In 1989, in Kenya, the authorities organized a public burning of 12 tons of ivory confiscated from poachers. The action was a symbolic step in the fight against illegal trade and was intended to draw attention to the mass extermination of elephants. A crowd outside a newspaper in New York City on April 15, 1912, attentively reads a list of survivors of the Titanic. Such ads became the only source of information for relatives and friends of passengers. Hilda Yong, a Chinese pilot, accepts a new aircraft as a gift from American Colonel Roscoe Turner in Washington in 1939. This gesture symbolized China's support from the United States on the eve of World War II. Louis de Funès, Mylène de Mongeau, and Jean Marais together in 1965. Actors who played the main roles in popular French films of that time. Their collaboration made the paintings iconic and brought great success in French cinema. In 1964, a major earthquake struck Portage, Alaska, damaging the railroad tracks and destroying the city's infrastructure. It was one of the most powerful seismic events in the history of the United States, with a magnitude of 9.2. Soviet athletes of the Spartak Club demonstrate strength and solidarity by performing on a giant gymnastic ball during a parade of physical education, students in Moscow, 1939. Kwakiutl Indians, in traditional attire, arrive at the wedding ceremony in a decorated canoe, British Columbia, Canada, 1914. This ceremony was accompanied by songs, dances, and rituals symbolizing the union of clans and the strengthening of community ties. These are wooden platform sandals from the 1970s, popular among teenagers and young girls. Such shoes with massive wooden soles and leather straps were considered a fashion trend of the time and were often associated with disco culture. Arnold Schwarzenegger and colleagues during the filming of the movie Terminator in the USA, 1984. James Cameron's iconic film set a new standard for science fiction cinema and brought Schwarzenegger worldwide fame. Ella Hatton, known as La Jaguarina, had defeated more than 6 dozen men in hiking and equestrian tournaments by 1897. She became the first woman to be recognized as a champion in jousting competitions due to her mastery of various types of weapons. Mao Zedong inspects the first mass-produced Chinese car, Dongfeng CA-71, produced by FOYAOZW. The car was unveiled on May 21, 1958, and became a symbol of China's desire to develop its own automotive industry. Shirley Ann Field participates in the Miss Great Britain pageant in 1955. She later became a famous British actress who starred in films of the 1960s. Eruption of the Eldfell volcano on the island of Heimaey, Iceland, January 1973. The lava flow threatened the city and the port, but thanks to the efforts of local residents who cooled the lava with seawater, the harbor was saved. Mae Musk in her youth, 1964. In the future, she became a famous model and nutritionist, as well as the mother of entrepreneur Elon Musk. The flood in Paris, 1910. The Seine flooded areas near the Saint-Lazare train station, and residents were forced to travel by boat. The water level reached a maximum of 8.62 meters and lasted for more than a month. In 1949, Viennese inventor Ego Seeger introduced an unusual device for train passengers that allows them to sleep while traveling. The design was fixed to the wall and supported the head, providing relative comfort on the road. Tomiko Kawabata in a car with a portable Sony TV, January 5, 1960. The device had an 8-inch screen and a built-in battery that provided up to 3 hours of battery life, a real innovation for its time. U.S. President Bill Clinton plays a tune on a saxophone given to him by Russian President Boris Yeltsin during a private dinner at his Dhaka, Moscow, 1994. The picture shows Edmund Hillary, New Zealand, and Tenzing Norgay, Nepal, the first people to officially reach the summit of Mount Everest on May 29, 1953. Their ascent has become a historic event and a symbol of human endurance and courage. The photo shows the visit of Queen Elizabeth II to Ghana in 1961, where she was accompanied by President Kwame Nkrumah. This visit was of great political importance. In the picture, Winston Churchill sits at the helm of a Boeing 314A flying boat. The photo was taken on January 16, 1942, when the British Prime Minister was traveling to the United States for talks with President Franklin Roosevelt. The photo shows a bathtub made especially for the President of the United States, William Howard Taft, in 1909. Taft was known for his obesity. His weight exceeded 150 kg, and the standard baths of the White House turned out to be too small for him. As a result, a huge cast-iron bathtub was ordered, accommodating 4 adult men at once. The photo shows Soviet officers in a captured BMW 3N car against the background of the destroyed Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. The picture was taken shortly after the end of the fighting in May 1945. A red banner is visible above the gate with the words, "Glory to the Soviet soldiers who hoisted the banner of victory over Berlin." The picture shows a demonstration of British women in London in 1915 during the First World War. On the poster, the participants of the rally demand to be allowed to serve in the army, citing the example of Italy, where women have already performed military and auxiliary duties. This device is a mechanical credit card imprinter, Knucklebuster, used in the 1960s and 1980s. He made an impression of the data from an embossed bank card onto a paper slip, using a copy paper for making a payment. An elderly woman, formerly a ballerina, demonstrates the splits, continuing to maintain flexibility and lightness even at the age of 60. The picture was taken in 1960 when she earned money by selling flowers on the street. Nikita Khrushchev demonstrates an ear of corn during the campaign for its introduction, 1959. The idea of mass cultivation of crops appeared after his visit to the United States and became one of the key directions of agricultural policy for a decade. Quentin Tarantino with Santa Claus, 1970. The future cult director was still a child at the time and hardly imagined the impact he would have on world cinema. Joseph Stalin with his daughter Svetlana at his dacha in the Moscow region, 1935. This rare family photo shows the leader of the USSR in an unusual environment, not at work, but with his family. 20-year-old Bob Marley in 1965. In this rare photo, the future reggae legend poses in a formal suit, even before he became a world music icon. The Amur mine layer. At the time of launching, 1907, during the First World War, the ship actively laid minefields which killed German steamships. Salvador Dali in Paris, 1969. The artist shocked the audience by walking his pet anteater on a leash. Benito Mussolini visits a wounded soldier in the hospital. Italy, 1941. The picture reflects the propaganda practice of that time, a demonstration of the dictator's concern for ordinary soldiers during the Second World War. Abandoned ships of the program Buran at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. After the closure of the Soviet reusable spacecraft program in the 1990s, the remaining vehicles remained rusting in the hangar, becoming a symbol of the unfulfilled ambitions of the USSR in the space race. Physical education classes in the courtyard of a girls' gymnasium in Samarkand, 1916. The educational institution combined traditional education with elements of physical education, which was considered important for the health and discipline of female students in the pre-revolutionary period. King Peter I Karageorgievich, after his inauguration in Belgrade, 1904, the monarch rides in on a white horse, accompanied by an honorary escort, and the streets of the capital are filled with spectators gathered to greet the new ruler of Serbia. 10-year-old Angelina Jolie, with her father, John Voight, at the Academy Awards ceremony in Los Angeles, 1986. Pablo Picasso and Brigitte Bardot in his studio on the Côte d'Azur, France, late 1950s. In the background is one of the portraits of the actress created by the artist. A rat named Hector, launched by France on February 22, 1961, became the first French living creature to travel into space. She ascended to an altitude of about 120 kilometers to the Veronique AG-1 rocket and successfully returned to Earth. Loda Chick went down in history as one of the first winners of American beauty contests. In 1921, mass competitions of this kind began to be held in the United States, which marked the beginning of a tradition that later took shape in Miss America. This moment was captured at the Oscar ceremony in 1972, when Charlie Chaplin returned to the United States for the first time in 2 decades after being exiled for political reasons. He received the honorary award for the invaluable influence that his work has had in making the art of cinema the subject of this century, and the audience greeted him with the longest ovation in Oscar history, more than 12 minutes. Elvis Presley was indeed drafted into the U.S. Army in March 1958. He served in the 3rd Armored Division in West Germany. Despite his worldwide fame, Presley refused special conditions and served alongside other soldiers. An advertising poster from the late 1980s dedicated to the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES. The console was positioned as revolutionary, with support for popular games like Duck Hunt and Gyromite, as well as unique accessories such as the ROB robot and a light pistol. It was the NES that brought the video game industry back to life after the crisis of 1983. A small jukebox that was installed in American eateries in the 1950s and 1960s. A visitor could flip a coin, choose a song, and listen to it through a shared jukebox, creating a retro cafe atmosphere. An iconic shot from the set of the movie Back to the Future, 1985. Michael J. Smith Fox and Christopher Lloyd pose in front of the DeLorean car, which has become a symbol of time travel. Audrey Hepburn at her first audition at the age of 11, 1942. The future actress was just beginning the path that would lead her to world fame. David Bowie and Catherine Deneuve playing chess, 1983. The shot was taken during the filming of the movie Hunger. Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves at a photo shoot for the movie Speed, 1994. Freddie Mercury performs at Wembley Stadium, in front of an audience of thousands, 1986. The concert went down in history as one of Queen's most striking shows. Bob Dylan at the Ed Sullivan Show rehearsal, New York, 1963. His performances in this program became an important stage in his career as a musician. In the 1980s, a polar explorer treated a polar bear to condensed milk. This rare footage shows the moment of unusual human-wild animal contact in the Arctic. In 1987, an apartment building in Romania, weighing about 7,600 tons, was lifted from its foundation and moved to a new location. Similar engineering operations were carried out to free up space for new buildings during the Ceausescu administration. Claude Monet poses in his studio among paintings 1923. During this period, he worked on the series Water Lilies, which became the pinnacle of his work. Marilyn Monroe greets American soldiers during a USO tour in Korea, February 1954. This shot captures the moment when the actress was invited to interrupt her honeymoon and perform in front of troops enlivened by more than 100,000 military personnel. Disneyland employees dine in the dining room in 1961 without taking off their character costumes. The photo highlights the special atmosphere behind the scenes of the park. Sophia Loren and Jane Mansfield at a dinner in Beverly Hills, 1957. The photo with Loren's expressive look has become a cult in Hollywood history. Ava Gardner with a fishing rod on the beach, circa 1942. In the photo, she is standing in the water in a kumazon and with a fishing rod. A stylish and unexpected moment from the life of an aspiring star. Marilyn Monroe on the beach, 1951. The actress poses in a swimsuit by the ocean, showing off her natural charm at the beginning of her career. The window cleaner of the Empire State Building, March 1936. This rare footage shows the courage of workers balancing on narrow ledges hundreds of meters above the streets of New York City before modern security systems were introduced. Drinking fountain in Central Park, New York, 1942. This black and white shot by Marjorie Collins captures American sailors refreshing themselves at a city fountain at the height of World War II. The Beatles in 1962. In the photo, the musicians were not yet world famous and were just beginning their journey to fame, performing in clubs in Liverpool and Hamburg. 25-year-old Clint Eastwood on the set of Revenge of the Creature, 1955. This is the beginning of his journey in the film industry. Still without fame, but with an aspiration that will soon lead him to international recognition. John F. Kennedy, aged about 10, in 1927. In this portrait, the younger Kennedy was still far from being a famous world figure. He was just a child in a large and politically oriented family, whose life was being watched but not yet admired. Barack Obama during his studies at Harvard Law School, circa 1990. He was not yet a public figure here, only a young lawyer who entered an elite school, who already showed academic talent and leadership qualities, later becoming president of the Harvard Law Review magazine. Members of the Whittier College football team, circa 1930. Among the players in the photo is Richard Nixon in a T, shirt with the number 12. The photo shows the young Nixon at the dawn of his career, long before his great political achievements. A shepherd leads his flock of sheep through the streets of London, 1920s, 1930s. In those days, sheep were released into city parks such as Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens to mow lawns naturally, reducing the cost of mechanical shearing. Law enforcement officers drain illegal alcohol into the sewer during Prohibition in the USA, 1921. This is clear evidence of the harsh realities of the era, when the prohibition of alcoholic beverages led to mass confiscation and immediate destruction of alcohol. The last imperial family of Russia is depicted in a 1913 photograph, later hand-painted. The picture shows Empress Alexandra Fyodorovna with her children in one of the rare quiet moments before the First World War and the Revolution. Children of Nicholas II are depicted during a walk, playing with a children's car, the beginning of the XX century. Such shots allow you to see the private side of the life of the Romanov dynasty, far from the official portraits. Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, newly married, in the kitchen in the 1940s. The picture reflects their daily lives before they became iconic figures on American television. Telephone company workers in Chillicothe, Ohio, 1939. They stand on the wooden crossbeams of the pole, establishing communication lines that ensured the development of telecommunications in the United States. The picture shows the danger and complexity of the work of the signalmen at that time. A photograph from 1900 captured a woman washing clothes in a wooden tub using a washboard. This method was common before the advent of the first household washing machines. In the picture, a woman is ironing clothes with a heavy cast iron, which was heated on a stove or coals. Such work was an integral part of washing and required a lot of time and effort. The laundry is already washed in the basket next to it, ready for further processing. 5 iconic Hollywood actors gathered on the cover of Vanity Fair magazine in 2003. Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, Harrison Ford, Brad Pitt, and Jack Nicholson. This picture symbolized an entire era of cinema and united stars of different generations. Times Square in New York in the 1920s was a busy center with a dense stream of cars, trams, and pedestrians. Large billboards and theater posters reflecting the cultural life of the city were already placed on the buildings. Mormon pioneers crossed the plains of the United States in the middle of the 19th century, heading towards Utah in search of religious freedom. They traveled in caravans of covered wagons, covering vast distances through harsh and inaccessible lands. A photo from around 1900 shows a logging camp in Maine. Workers pose at the log cabin they built, where they lived during the season. Lumberjacks worked in harsh conditions, harvesting wood for construction and industry. The World War II photograph shows popular Hollywood actors Lucille Ball, Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney, Greer Garson, and Betty Hutton during a tour to support the military. Such performances raised the morale of the soldiers who were away from home. A rare photograph of Joseph Stalin, taken in 1902 when he was still an underground revolutionary. During this period, he actively participated in the activities of social democratic circles and the organization of strikes. The photograph, Embrace of a Black Cat, taken by Andy Proka in 1963, captures the moment of the animal's childlike affection and trust in man. The cat hugs the boy's shoulder, creating an image of rare harmony between a child and a pet. A picture from 1927 shows a group of high school girls learning the basics of car mechanics in training sessions. The girls work with the car, checking the engine and inspecting the car parts. An unusual picture captured a man in a suit walking down the street with a donkey next to him, as if he were a familiar companion. The contrast between the businesslike image of the owner and the animal creates a comical scene. A photo from the 1980s shows 2 men talking in phone booths next to each other. One of them is dressed in a suit and leaning against a partition. The other is in casual clothes, with a pipe in front of his face and a wide smile. This is a rare shot from a volcanic eruption in Hawaii in 1969, when lava fountains reached heights of up to 300 meters. Parked cars and people watching the spectacle can be seen in the foreground. The photo shows students of a French school in Moscow in 1900 playing croquet at recess. Girls in long dresses and aprons are actively involved in the game, and adults are sitting on benches to the side, watching. This is a rare picture of the faithful dog, Hachiko, at Shibuya Station in Tokyo around 1933. Hachiko became a symbol of devotion, coming to the station every day to meet the master professor even after his death. The story of the dog became world famous and became the basis of films and monuments. The photo shows Winston Churchill in 1935, at the moment when he learned about his re-election to Parliament. The author of the picture is photographer Lucian Aigner, known for his live reportage shots. This photograph captured Churchill in a relaxed atmosphere, which was rare for official political portraits of the time. The picture shows the excavations of the Berezovsky mammoth, found in 1900 near the Berezovka River in Yakutia. His remains, recovered in 1902, became one of the best preserved specimens, allowing scientists to study the anatomy of the extinct animal in detail. The photo shows Claude Monet in his studio in Giverny, where he created many of his famous paintings. Early and late works of the master are visible on the walls, including sketches with water lilies and garden landscapes. It was here that the artist developed his unique impressionistic style, which became a key trend in the art of the 20th century. This shot was captured during the longest flight in history. From December 1958 to February 1959, Bob Tim and John Cook kept Cessna 172 in the air for 64 consecutive days. The plane was refueled more than 128 times in the air using a truck, as seen in the photo. The experiment became a record that has not been beaten yet. This is a rare school portrait of Hillary Clinton, taken in 1958, long before her future political career. The picture reflects her childhood years in Chicago, when she was just starting out. This is a street scene in Brooklyn, New York, 1948. Children gathered around a van, good humor, buying and enjoying ice cream. Such cars became a real symbol of American post-war childhood, and their appearance on the streets caused joy to all the surrounding children. A family photo from Pittsfield, 1954. 13 Brooks family sisters gathered at their mother's bedside to welcome the newborn Leslie Benjamin Brooks, the only son in the family. His mother, 39-year-old Mrs. Brooks, gave birth to a baby right at home, and this event became a real sensation in the district. Residents of West Berlin are lifting babies above a concrete partition so that relatives in East Berlin can see them. The picture was taken in 1961, shortly after the construction of the Berlin Wall, which divided the city and became a symbol of the Cold War. The Simon Personal Communicator, released in 1994 by IBM, is considered the world's first smartphone. The device had a 4.5-inch LCD touchscreen and combined the functions of a phone and a PDA. Its price was $899, but production stopped in less than a year due to low demand. The photo shows the moment when the 4-year-old Dalai Lama XIV ascended to the throne as the spiritual leader of Tibet on February 22, 1940. The ceremony took place in Lhasa and had great symbolic significance for the Tibetan people. Young Lhamo Thondup, later named Tenzin Gyatso, became a follower of a centuries-old tradition of spiritual leadership. Sailors watched the explosion of the USS Shaw during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, on December 7, 1941. This moment became one of the most dramatic episodes of the outbreak of World War II for the United States. An Inuit Kutuktuk woman in a traditional outfit at Fullerton Harbor, Nunavut, 1905. The photo was taken by Geraldine Moody, known for her documentary photographs of Canada's early history. The photo shows the cultural heritage and traditions of the Northern peoples. A mobile coffee shop in London on a cold day in 1932. Such shops were popular in the 1930s and allowed the townspeople to warm up quickly. A veteran of the Napoleonic Wars poses with his wife around 1860. He was considered one of the last survivors of the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. The unique device from 1951 combined a TV, a radio, and a cocktail set. Such models reflected the post-war fashion for multifunctional household appliances and the desire for home comfort. The Carmagnole diving suit, created in France in 1880, became the first anthropomorphic model in history. His helmet had 25 small viewing holes, and the design itself demonstrated early attempts to ensure underwater human mobility. Today, the original is kept in the National Maritime Museum in Paris. This rare photograph from the middle of the 20th century shows a young Bruce Lee and his kung fu master, Yip Man, and his teacher, Wing Chun. Their meeting took place in Hong Kong in the late 1950s, which marked a turning point in Bruce's development as an outstanding fighter and philosopher of martial arts. An exciting shot from a concert in Los Angeles, 1951, demonstrates the passion and energy of the audience, as described by one of the users. In the photo, people literally explode with emotions. They spin, jump, and freeze in ecstasy to the powerful sound of a saxophone. In this touching photograph taken in June 1938 by photographer Dorothea Lange, a family from Pittsburgh County, Oklahoma, is forced to leave their home due to drought and economic collapse, the tragic consequences of the Great Depression, and the Dust Bowl. The photo shows a group of vacationers having a picnic right on a fallen great tree in Sequoia National Park in 1917. The girls and men settled down on the massive trunk, using it as an unusual bench, an indicator of how nature could serve as a podium for relaxation and fun.